On slide 15, you will see number 4, the next development, which is positivism. Auguste Comte, the founder of sociology, believed that human societies across history, they behave just like physics. They operate under fixed and deterministic laws. There is a very fixed way by which, if you watch all of history, or if you watch the fall and rise of empires and kingdoms, and how people get married and how people get divorced and how people talk to each other, etc., you will find very good, well-established patterns, statistically speaking, as good as a scientific discovery. This is what Auguste Comte at least believed. And he set out to discover those laws, and this is what we call today sociology or the social sciences or even humanities, because what he discovered, what he believed actually, this idea, this agenda to apply this accuracy and the scientific method to humanities. After sociology and was established, and he famously started doing these studies, etc., it caught on, and there was schools in psychology who did the same. There are schools in politics who started doing the same, in economics. All of these social sciences, they started evolving after this insight that, we don't need to sit down on our armchairs and then think about, the way Plato and Aristotle did sociology or politics, sitting down on their desks, thinking about how best to run the government, and then you write something like the Republic. No, if you really want to know how to govern a certain city or a certain country, what you really need to do is to go study it, and you need to have methods that are very accurate and very precisely defined. More on this in other rooms, but I just want this positivism word. Where does it come from? As he studies this, social truths, let's call them, which we called sociology later, he divides the stages of evolution of human history and culture into 3 very big stages. Again, today this is highly contested, but the idea is still attractive. The first stage is the theological stage, the first stage of our history as a species. Theological states meaning humans, when they wanted to figure something out, when they wanted an explanation, they will always invoke myths and legends and stories and metaphysics to explain what is it that they see. There is no rain this year, there's a drought. Oh, the god of rain, whatever is upset, let's slay some goats. The volcano erupted. Oh God, whatever that we did, we angered the god of war. Let's go do this, go do that, and then it'll be fine. All of the explanations of all phenomena was enclosed within mythology or stories or metaphysics, whatever it is that you prefer calling it. The second stage, which started for Comte after the Enlightenment, and that's another big contested claim, we had scientific methods way earlier, or at least, emergences of this kind of thinking way earlier, even earlier than Aristotle. But for Comte, this metaphysical stage starts with the Enlightenment. Humans have started to produce leadership. And they are, in that period of history, mostly clergy. Some of them, however, are not clergy. They are not religious leaders. They are philosophers. And those people are telling other people what is it that they should be believing. They influence other people into believing this or that. And Comte really talks in length about the French Revolution. For him, this is a very significant, of course, living in his era. He was born immediately or during the first events, and then he saw the whole thing during his life. So for him, this was the historic moment. And it is a historic moment. After all this decades and centuries of feudalism and other forms of government, we had the people, the bourgeoisie in France at least, change the system and want a share of the cake now, which is the events of the French Revolution. And so people started to believe at least in rights. they started to believe that there are principles somewhere outside of metaphysics, outside of, I don't want to call it metaphysics, sorry, this is the wrong word, outside of mythology, I want to call it. Because you can argue that rights and, human rights, freedom, truth, love, etc., this is also still part of metaphysics. So it is this metaphysical stage that where people, they move away from religion, some of them at least, but then they believe in other metaphysical entities which govern their life, other standards, other aspirations, you want to call them, systems of beliefs, ethics, etc., philosophies in general. And the last stage is the positive stage, where we get the word positivism from. This positive stage is the stage where scientific method and empirical collection of data is the only reliable method to generate knowledge. The scientific stage where everyone believes that they can access the knowledge. It's not in the hands of experts only. It's not only in the hands of clergymen who talk with gods that are beyond this world. No, everybody has responsibility. Everybody has access to this. Everybody can learn it. Why? Because all you need is logic and your sensory experience. That's all you need. If you are somewhat a good thinker, if you are calm, if you can analyze things, if you're not crazy, you have your abilities, right? And if you have access to the universe, which we all have access to, then you can know things. Other methods of knowing, asking people around for their opinions, asking the leaders for their aspirations, relying on our intuition, on introspection, on our feelings, on religious faith, those things are all rejected in the positive stage. Of course, the positive stage starts with Comte's generation of scientists. This is what he believes. Of course, after Comte and after this positivism, not only the positivism, but all his work in the social sciences, as I said, these positive schools start arising in mathematics, in logic, in psychology, in economics, in historiography. Everywhere people wanted that very fixed standard that relies on sensory input and logic. We all want to have our very well-defined, very clean, very neat logic in the theory, and we want to have our input coming clean. Now that we have worked out the claims and the inner mechanics of our theory, the claims can come neatly translated now, and we can tighten our logic as much as possible so that this noumena-phenomena thing that Kant talks about, we can keep that noumena in check. Okay, there's certain things that we can never access. Okay, fine, we can never access those, but we are positive about whatever we can access, meaning we are sure we can access it and we can access it accurately. This philosophical school of positivism, it was very popular, and they, as they draw this logic and sensory experience, they revisited Kant's division of analytic-synthetic. Now, for them, truth was either analytic, so something that you can entail mathematically. So now there's a larger sense of analyticity, not only things that follow from definition, but the mathematics inside it as well. Everything you can entail without experiment is now analytic called, or the other term would be positive. Positive meaning you can be sure of it because you derived it by using reason and logic with sensory input, or to analyze sensory input. So we gave up on that analytic a posteriori, analytic a priori, all that stuff that Kant did. We used the words in different meanings, which is, again, very confusing. Analytic now means everything that is true by definition and can be entailed through logic alone. And positive means what is it that you can learn from applying this logic to the sensory input that you are receiving. So this is the word that it's half of the word that is the topic for today. When I say logical positivism, now we know what positivism is. Positivism is this attitude that Auguste Comte defined. Any questions, anything else with anybody?
So I just wanted to, so I like the 3 stages idea. and something clearly really important happened in the Enlightenment. But I don't really see these three stages mapping the way, it seems to me the theological stage, at least as defined here, is prehistoric, because long before we have kind of recorded history, you have people depending on priests, clergy leaders to tell them what the gods think, or whatever it is. Um, uh, and then, of course, at some point there is the Enlightenment. Well, I don't see how that maps very well onto the theological metaphysical boundary, but it's obviously an important thing. And it strikes me it's the only really important thing. It's just the point where you start realizing, as you went on about, that truth is accessible by anybody who simply looks at the world and puts together logical conclusions, mathematically based often, et cetera. So I guess while I like once again, I mean, I'm just saying there's kind of those three stages seem to me to make sense, but I think the theological thing is kind of not important. The only thing important is the Enlightenment, the idea of science.
So you get to keep in. I'm with you totally. This division again is very rough. You have to keep in mind that at the time of Auguste Comte, uh, um, modern historiography did not exist because his ideas kicked it out, kicked it off. I mean, so this idea that we can, once we are doing history, have to be absolutely, relying on the sensory input, on archaeology. Archaeology did not exist, or very little of it existed. So all of these discoveries that we know now about ancient Rome, about their way of life, all of these discoveries that we know about ancient Egypt, ancient Mesopotamia, all these things, they did not exist. And so Auguste Comte was kind of looking from his own mind, and this is the perception of the European, let's say, Enlightenment mind upon all the other cultures, or upon its own past. Uh, he looks back on his past and he says, we tried following gods, we tried following metaphysical ideas. Most of them don't work. Now we need to rely on the material world. Back then, that was a new discovery. Of course, for us today, it's much more, it's taken for given, at least in our circles here in the scientific discourse, and it's much more subtle than this. There's a lot of wiggle room within this point of view. So you got to cut him some slack here, not to defend Auguste Comte, but just to give perspective on why is it so rough, this division. If he knew, I'm pretty sure if he had access to all the archaeology we have access to now and all the historiography we have access to, I tend to think that he would not have done this division that he did. He wasn't alone, by the way. Hegel makes similar comments. Because he did not know that Mesopotamia, it wasn't discovered back then during his time. So he calls Persia the cradle of civilization. Again, if he knew what we know today, he would have. I think he wouldn't have made the claims. This is the context where these ideas are discussed.